What's going on, everyone? Chris here with Clutter Reduction Junk Removal. I know we all became entrepreneurs because we sucked at school, but I got a whiteboard. Don't be frightened. I'm going to talk a little bit about junk removal price sheet. Got a few people comment about that in the last couple of months. I personally don't use a price sheet, so that's why I don't really talk about it often. I have made them in the past, so we're going to talk about them based on the price sheet I have in my phone, notes, and in my head. So we're going to talk about the format. I'm going to show you two examples I made on Canva, which you can get for free, by the way. They have a pro option. It's like $120 a year or bi-monthly. But honestly, I made those two using the free option. So just as good. And then we're going to talk about some surcharges that you can do in addition to volume, some of the examples, why you would need them, and how you would charge for them. So we're going to get into the format. Hopefully this is very understandable. And hopefully you're not looking at a glare because I actually can't see my phone. I haven't flipped around for once. So the way I always do my price sheets, I try to keep them super simple, quick, efficient, to the point. So I'll do my name and logo at the top. If you have a logo, if not, that's okay. Just do name. You can write price sheet if you want. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. This is mainly going to be used when you're giving an estimate with somebody, you're walking one-on-one with them, and you're showing it to them as you're discussing pricing. It's more as a credible, detailed list of saying, hey, this is my half truck price. I'm not just throwing some number out there. This is actually like what we charge people for half a truck. So name and logo. If you're going to be sending it out to like property management or something, I would include your contact information at the top because not everybody makes it to the bottom of the page. And then I would get into your main charging. For most junk removal people, that is volume. Some people charge by weight, very few. Harder to gauge. You have to have a special scale, but it's up to you. Volume is usually the main way to go. You would have your minimum pickup, and then you would have your increments. Now, if you have a smaller vehicle or you want it to be super simple, I would do quarters. If you want to open up the horizon, that you have a little bit more wiggle room in between the tiers versus trying to guess, I would do eighths. And I know some people with larger vehicles do tenths, and then a lot of the franchises they do 12 to 16ths, which is a lot of increments, but it is for a reason, and it's a good reason. It's for upsell purposes. But for the most part, I would say quarters to eighths is usually most people's cup of tea. So figure out what works for you. I would probably judge it by the size of your truck. If you have a 5x8 trailer or using a pickup truck, I would do quarters or even halves. If you have a 12-foot trailer or a 14-foot trailer, I would do quarters or eighths, up to you. If you have a 16-foot truck, maybe do tenths, you know. And then we would have our surcharges. And this will be things like flights of stairs, elevators, long walks, heavy items, debris, stuff like that. Keep it super simple. I would do like 3 to 5 tops, so it's not overly crowded. I would adjust it to what you typically work with, and we'll talk more about that when we go over the surcharges. And then at the bottom, I think it's a nice touch to include discounts. So like I'll put down discounts available for seniors and veterans. And you don't have to put the percent or the dollar amount, just leave it like that. But I think it's a nice touch when people are looking down the list and they see that at the end. It's just like oh, okay, that's nice. Not necessary, optional, but you can do discounts. And then again, if you're sending this out, I'll include your contact information down at the bottom. But as simple as that looks, and as stupid as that looks, it is literally that for a reason, is to be simple to the point. Now I'm going to show you the two examples, and then we'll talk about the surcharges. All right, so this is the first option. This is actually one I've had myself in the past. I don't carry them with me, and these pricings are just kind of made up. So don't go off of my pricing. I just kind of threw these numbers together. But basically, I have my name at the top, price list and fancy little font on the bottom, by volume if I was doing quarters, plus my minimum pickup, extra fees, keep it super quick and simple, logo at the bottom. This is a very minimalist pricing sheet, very straight to the point. These are the 3 things I most often deal with. And then those are if you were doing quarters. Now, this next one, this is something you'd probably see quite often with these little trucks, and you have like the little measurements and whatnot in here. I actually made these. So The little truck design is something that you can just find if you go to Canva's elements. You can type in truck and it'll show up different types of trucks, or you could do like a dumpster or something if you're doing rentals. But you can literally just copy and paste a truck. These little yellow bars I just got from I just went to the element and went to shapes and then just color them in yellow. Or you can see a truck right there. I just colored it in yellow and you can see they're like individual bars. And I just added them up all the way throughout. And I just went ahead and, again, this is just random pricing, so don't go off of this. But I just kind of use like a visual effect. So if you tell a customer, yeah, so this is approximately how much 1/8 of a load is going to take, and this is what I'm quoting you for. So when you go out to look at my truck, it's not going to look like a lot. It's only taking up this one little slither here. And then that's the price. And then at the bottom, this is something that I sent to a couple of properties that I work with on a one-to-one basis. So it doesn't need to be super, descriptive. It was just kind of meant to get the point across. So I went ahead and included in the truckload price for a full load, you're getting 2 hours of labor, approximately a ton of weight. I don't have any way of like charging back, but what I would do is, like for construction debris, for example, I already know it's going to be more than a ton. So I would just tack on a little extra in the beginning. It's going to include disposal fees. It's going to include fuel and other expenses, taxes, and debris, which is only loaded up to 2 feet in height. And then truckload surcharges. So you have extra labor per person. You have the bagging fee, loading distance of more than 150 feet, stairs by the flight, heavy item, and then include my information at the bottom. So this is another example that's a little bit more visual if you're wanting to go this route. Otherwise, you can always keep it super simple and just do something like this. But next, I'm going to go ahead and talk about some of the extra surcharges you can do. There is a long list. I would recommend you pick out what works for you. All right, now we're getting into the surcharges. I'm going to go into explanation for this because for those of you that are newer, may not make 100% sense. And if you're not new and you're like, why do I have to listen to you talk about why do I have to charge for heavy items? Skip it. If you are familiar with it, skip it. It's okay. That won't be a hurt. So surcharges, again, as I mentioned, I would keep it to like 3 to 5 on the sheet and keep it to what you normally work with the most. So if you work in more residential homes, then stairs is probably going to be your friend, a disassembly, and maybe like heavy items or something, or extra labor. If you're in downtown areas and you have a lot of high-rise buildings, then elevators and long walks and extra labor are probably going to be your friend. And if you do a lot of construction debris or demolition, then the use of power tools and special equipment and extra time is probably going to be more likely to be up your alley. So I'm going to give you a list of stuff that I have used in the past and or am familiar with. I don't use all of these. I don't put them in my pricing often. What I will actually do is, let's talk about this really quick. When you give people an invoice, try not to itemize everything. Like I have a list here that has almost 10 items on it. If 6 of them apply, don't do volume, extra labor, and then 6 items. It's going to look like an itemized bill, and people don't typically like to see that. Because then they look at that and say, oh, God, I have to charge extra for you to take apart my bed? I wish I knew that. I would have done that myself. I would just try to find ways to basically move those numbers into other larger ones. So, for example, if you have volume and extra labor, but you tacked in an extra charge for stairs and disassembly, I would take what you would have charged for that and throw it into your extra labor. Or maybe throw the stairs into your volume and put the disassembly charge into your labor. So that way on the bill, it only shows 2 actual items versus like 6. So anyways, getting into the surcharges. These are just examples. You don't have to use them all, but if you see that often, it's a good way to use it. A lot of these are not only for inconvenience, but also for time purposes and or safety. So starting out the list, labor. You can either charge this by hourly or you can do increments of like 15 minutes or 30 minutes, charged by X amount of people. If you want to do a solo, pair of 2, pair of 3, whatever, and then you would just put down your amount. Stairs, elevators, and long walks. So for stairs, typically you charge by the flight. So if you're going to 2nd floor, you charge once. If you're going to 3rd floor, you charge twice, vice versa. If you have an elevator, although it is easier than stairs, it can still be very time consuming. So I usually do per floor, and it's just a much cheaper charge. Usually it's like $5 per floor. So if I'm going up to the 10th floor of an apartment building, I'm going to charge an extra $50. And you might be questioning, well, elevators aren't that long. Well, they can be. If you don't have that elevator strictly reserved for you 100%, anybody can stop the elevator on any floor. You have to wait for the elevator to settle, doors to open. You have to tell the person, oh, sorry, we're doing a service. I can't let you in. And they're going to argue with you because they live there. They don't give a fuck. And then you have to let the doors close again. And then you have to continue going up. And you have to hope it doesn't happen 5 more times. It happened all the time with moving, and it took us forever. So I charge just a little bit extra for that. I don't even tell the customer. I just throw it right into the price because I already know it's going to affect my time. Long walks. Typically, most people do more than 150 feet from the truck. A long walk doesn't sound like much, especially if you have dollies. Like, all I got to do is roll it to the truck. Whoopie-doo. God forbid, I got to walk a little bit. The reason for it is time. It may not seem like a lot, but if it takes you an extra 2 to 3 minutes to make each trip versus having it right there in front of the door, that may add up if you're doing 10, 20, 30 trips for bigger jobs. That could be a half hour, hour of time. If you're paying your employee money to be there, that's more time you have to pay. So you want to compensate for that. Otherwise, that extra amount's going to come out of your profit from your volume. Next up is debris. So construction debris, for example. I usually charge a specific amount in addition to volume. So if a full load is $500, I'll charge $585 for construction debris. Doesn't matter what it is. It could be all wood. I'm going to charge an extra $85. And I personally only load about 2 feet in height. So it's kind of like a bed load without it being like, it's not like it's asphalt being dropped in and you're only doing like literally a bound. I know a lot of franchises do a bed load up to a certain amount of height, and I just kind of carry that on for weight purposes because it made sense. So that's what I personally do. You can go to the brim if you want, but try to charge extra because most places will charge you extra to dump it. And you typically have a more dense material, so your weight's going to be higher, which means your dump fee's going to be higher. So you want to make sure you're compensated for that. Next up, this is a controversial one that I've apparently experienced. I always thought everyone did this. Heavy item. So the way I describe this to customers is a heavy item would be considered a standard item and excess of weight despite the volume. So my favorite example for this is using a glass tabletop. So if you've never messed with thick glass tabletops, you would be quick to underestimate how heavy they can be. A 1 inch thick, like a top 1 inch thick, 6 feet long, 4 feet wide, probably weighs around 300 pounds, maybe a little more. But if you were to take 2 picture frames that were 4 feet by 3 feet and stick them right next to each other, same amount of volume, 20 times the weight. Now, imagine you had a couple of those in your truck. They're about 300 pounds each. All of a sudden, you have over 1,000 pounds. And guess what? It takes up no more room than a dresser. If you were to take the cubic footage and power it all down, it wouldn't even come close to the size of a dresser. And yet, it weighs almost a ton of weight. So that is an example. I usually charge $15 to $25 depending on the type of item. If it's really heavy, I'll charge a little more. If it's just like a cast iron table that weighs 100 pounds for absolutely no reason because it's only the size of a nightstand, I might do 15 pounds. So you kind of play around with your numbers a little bit. I know some franchises, they charge $50 to $100 and they do it of anything in excess of 250 pounds, which doesn't sound like a lot. A sleeper sofa could be 300 pounds. But it's because it poses a threat to the workers because it's a heavier amount than a standard individual should be lifting at any given time on a routine basis. Just because you're a mover or you do junk removal doesn't mean you're Superman. You have just as much risk of being injured. So that's the reason for it. But you can either do a small amount and do it per item. You can do a large amount for super big things. It's up to you. Disassembly, usually per an item, or you could do 15-minute increments like we talked about in the labor. So for example, if you're going to a house and you're taking apart 4 beds, that can take time. Sometimes they're quick and simple. It takes you like 3 minutes. Sometimes they're a pain in the ass and it's IKEA and it takes you 15 minutes to take it apart, especially if you have multiple of those. That's extra time in addition to what you're doing. So you'd want to charge for that. So you can either do maybe 10, 15, 25 bucks per an item you have to take apart, or you can just do like for every 15 minutes, we're going to say, hey, we're going to charge you an extra 25 bucks for this. Next up is power tool usage. Now, when I say power tool, I'm not referring to like a power drill you would use to take apart a bed. I'm talking more like a sawzall to cut up something to make it smaller to fit in your truck, or using a chainsaw to cut up limber, or using some kind of specialty tool to help you with like cutting down a shed or something. I don't know. You know, it's whatever power tool you don't often use and you bought literally for these specific reasons, probably not cheap. Make sure you charge for these items when you have to use them. Kind of goes towards the funds. The next one is pretty important for junk removal, and I don't think a lot of people do it. Sanitation fees. So basically, anytime you have to use PPE, which is equipment that you would wear to protect yourself, or it's posing a hazard to you, you would want to charge a little extra. Now, you can either just do a flat rate amount, or you can do it by the compensation of the equipment you're going to have to go buy. It's up to you. But typically, if you're dealing with soiled items or animal urination and feces or potential blood, you know, that's when it starts getting a little tricky, because it may not seem like a lot. You've probably seen worse in your life. But if any of that gets in you in any fashion, that can be very bad, especially cuts. I have cuts every damn day. I don't even know where they came from. So if I'm over here messing with stuff and I don't have gloves and I don't see it right away, and I go to grab a piece and I slide back and, oh, it smells like cat pee. Cool. And I have a little cut right here. You can pose a threat of infection. And let's not even get into potential diseases. Freaking cats have all kinds of stuff. And I got 3 of them. So there's always a potential risk. And it could literally be for anything. But I would charge for any PPE equipment you have to go buy and profit. So charge it a little bit so you're making up for your time and the fact that you even have to buy it in the first place. And then if you're having to deal with any soiled items, you know, you might want to take extra precautions. I made a video a while back at a senior living facility. The bed had stainage on it that was partial blood looking and partial feces related. I brought a mattress bag with me and my helper. We never touched the bed. We literally slid the mattress bag onto it, lifted it up, taped it off, took it out on a mattress bar. I am comfortable with touching beds, but not if it has that kind of stuff on it. I will put a bag over it. But that's just like not a big deal, but you know, it's just you're protecting yourself. Plus it's nasty. And then the last thing is special equipment rental. So this would vary by the job. You wouldn't list it on your main page. This would be like for a very specialty event. But basically you're covering the cost of picking up the item and your time to pick it up, drop it off, and optional if you're going to be hiring somebody who is specialized to utilize that equipment. Let's say, for example, you're going to do a clean out for a warehouse and they have a bunch of machinery that isn't movable by human hands and or with a dolly. Maybe you would need to get like a bobcat or something that can come in and scoop it up and bring it out to your truck. Something like that. I don't even know if you need to have a license to drive a bobcat personally, but if you did, you would have to hire somebody who can do that. So now you're having to pay that guy and you're having to pay for the equipment. So stuff like that you would charge extra for. And I would include the time it takes to pick up and drop it off as well. So you are 100% covered. And that's pretty much it for surcharges. There's a lot of them out there. Those are like the main ones I use and or am familiar with. Again, you can use discounts at the bottom just for a little nice touch. And then that's it. Keep it clean, keep it simple, stick to what you actually charge. It's more of a reference point when you're giving a live estimate with somebody, or if you're sending it off to a property, try to include a little bit of information. The best thing that I've found is the less details I put on there, the more people ask me questions, and then I can explain it better than they're going to read and perceive it on paper. So hopefully that helps and gives you guys some ideas, and hopefully the Canva gives you an idea as well. If you're not familiar with Canva, I'll put a link in the description to bring you to that website. Again, you can do a free trial. They do have a pro version like everything else in the world, but honestly, the free, you can get just as much done. So I hope that helps, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.